Chapter 41. The Book of Fara and Atirah. Chapter 1. There is no Fara and no Atirah. It was narrated from Abu Hurairah that the Messenger of Allah said, There is no Fara and no Atirah. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Hurairah that the Messenger of Allah forbade Fara and Atirah. Great Sahih. Miknaf bin Sulaim said, While we were standing with the Messenger of Allah at Arafat, he said, O people, it is upon each family to offer a sacrifice, udhiyah and an Atirah each year. One of the narrators, Muad, said, Ibn Avn used to offer slaughter, the Atirah, and I saw that with my own eyes during Rajab Daif. Ahmed bin Shuaib bin Muhammad bin Abdullah bin Amr narrated that his father and Zayd bin Aslam said, O Messenger of Allah, what about the Fara? He said, It is a duty, but if you leave it, the animal, until it becomes half-grown and you load upon it in jihad, in the cause of Allah, or give it to a widow, that is better than if you slaughter it when it is just born, and its flesh is difficult to separate from its skin. Then you turn your vessel upside down, because you will no longer be able to get milk from the mother, and you cause your she-camel to grieve at the loss of its young. They said, O Messenger of Allah, what about the Atirah? He said, The Atirah is a duty, Hassan. Abu Abdurrahman An-Nasai said, Abu Ali al-Hanafi, one of the narrators, they are 4 brothers. One of them is Abu Bakr and Bishr and Sharik, and the other. It was narrated that Yahya bin Surara bin Karim bin al-Harith bin Amr al-Bahili said, I heard my father say that he heard his grandfather al-Harith bin Amr that he met the Messenger of Allah during the farewell pilgrimage when he was atop his slit-eared camel. He said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, may my father and mother be ransomed for you. Pray for forgiveness for them. Pray for forgiveness for me. He said, May Allah forgive you, plural. Then I came to him from the other side, hoping that he would supplicate just for me alone, and not them. I said, O Messenger of Allah, pray for forgiveness for me. He said, May Allah forgive you, plural. Then a man among the people said, O Messenger of Allah, what about the Atirah and Fara? He said, Whoever wishes to offer an Atirah may do so, and whoever does not wish to may not. Whoever wishes to offer a Fara may do so, and whoever does not wish to may not. And with regard to sheep, a sacrifice should be offered, and he clasped between his fingers except for one. Great Hassan. Yahya bin Surara as-Sami said, My father narrated to me from his grandfather al-Harith bin Amr that he met the Messenger of Allah during the farewell pilgrimage and said, May my father and mother be sacrificed for you, O Messenger of Allah. Pray for forgiveness for me. He said, May Allah forgive you, plural. He was atop his slit-eared camel, and I came around to the other side, and he quoted the hadith. Great Hassan. Chapter 2. The explanation of Atirah. It was narrated that Nubaisha said, "It was said to the Prophet during the Jahiliyyah, we used to offer the Atirah," he said, "slaughter for the sake of Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, no matter what month it is. Do good for the sake of Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, and feed the poor." Great Sahih. It was narrated that Nubaisha said, "A man called out while he was in Mina and said, 'O Messenger of Allah, we used to sacrifice the Atirah during the Jahiliyyah in Rajab. What do you command us to do?' He said, 'Sacrifice during whatever month it is. Do good for the sake of Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, and feed the poor.' They said, 'O Messenger of Allah, we used to sacrifice the Fara during the Jahiliyyah. What do you command us to do?' He said, 'For every flock of grazing animals, feed the firstborn, as you feed the rest of your flock, until it reaches an age where it could be used to carry loads. Then sacrifice it and give its meat in charity.' Great Sahih. It was narrated from Nubaisha, a man of Hudayl, that the Prophet said, 'I used to forbid you to store the meat of the sacrifices for more than 3 days, so that there would be enough for everyone. But now Allah the Mighty and Sublime has bestowed plenty upon us, so eat some, give some in charity, and store some, for these days are the days of eating, drinking, and remembering Allah.' A man said, 'O Messenger of Allah, we used to sacrifice the Atirah during the Jahiliyyah in Rajab. What do you command us to do?' He said, 'Sacrifice to Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, whatever month it is. Do good for the sake of Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, and feed the poor.' He said, 'O Messenger of Allah, we used to sacrifice the Fara during the Jahiliyyah. What do you command us to do?' He said, 'For every flock of grazing animals, feed the firstborn, as you feed the rest of your flock, until it reaches an age where it could be used to carry loads. Then sacrifice it, and give its meat in charity to the wayfarer, for that is good.' Great Sahih. Chapter 3. The explanation of Fara. It was narrated that Nubaisha said, "A man called out to the Prophet and said, 'We used to sacrifice the Atirah, during the Jahiliyyah in Rajab. What do you command us to do?' He said, 'Sacrifice whatever month it is. Do good for the sake of Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, and feed the poor.' He said, 'We used to sacrifice the Fara during the Jahiliyyah. What do you command us to do?' He said, 'For every flock of grazing animals, feed the firstborn, as you feed the rest of your flock, until it reaches an age where it could be used to carry loads. Then sacrifice it, and give its meat in charity, for that is good.' Great Sahih. It was narrated that Nubaisha al-Hudayli said, "A man said, 'O Messenger of Allah, we used to sacrifice the Atirah during the Jahiliyyah in Rajab. What do you command us to do?' He said, 'Sacrifice to Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, whatever month it is. Do good for the sake of Allah, the Mighty and Sublime, and feed the poor.' Great Sahih. It was narrated that Abu Rasin Lakit bin Amir al-Ukaili said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, we used to offer sacrifices during the Jahiliyyah in Rajab and eat of their meat and offer some to those who came to us. The Messenger of Allah said, there is nothing wrong with that. One of the narrators, Waqi bin Udus, said, I will not leave it. Great Hassan. Chapter 4. The skin of dead animals, those not slaughtered or killed properly. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas from Maimuna that the Prophet passed by a dead sheep that had been thrown aside. He said, who does this belong to? They said, Maimuna. He said, why did she not make use of its skin? They said, it is dead meat. Yeah, it was not slaughtered properly. He said, Allah the Mighty and Sublime has only forbidden us to eat it. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Ibn Abbas said, the Messenger of Allah passed by a dead sheep that he had given to a freed slave woman of Maimuna, the wife of the Prophet. He said, why don't you make use of its hide? They said, O Messenger of Allah, it is dead meat. The Messenger of Allah said, it is only forbidden to eat it. Great Sahih. Ibn Abbas said, the Messenger of Allah saw a dead sheep that belonged to the freed slave woman of Maimuna and had come from the Sadaqah. He said, why don't you take off its hide and make use of it? They said, it is dead meat. He said, it is only unlawful to eat it. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas. Maimuna told me that a sheep died. And the Prophet said, why don't you tan its skin and make use of it? Great Sahih. Ibn Abbas said, the Prophet passed by a sheep belonging to Maimuna that had died and said, why don't you take its skin and tan it and make use of it? Great Sahih. Ibn Abbas said, the Prophet passed by a dead sheep and said, why don't you make use of its skin? Great Sahih. It was narrated that Savda, the wife of the Prophet, said, a sheep of ours died, and we tanned its skin and continued to make nabid in it until it wore out. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Ibn Abbas said, the Messenger of Allah said, any skin that is tanned has been purified. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Vala that he asked Ibn Abbas, we are attacking the Maghrib, and they are people who worship idols, and they have water skins in which they keep milk and water. Ibn Abbas said, tanning is purification. Ibn Vala said, is this your own opinion or something that you heard from the Messenger of Allah? He said, no, I heard it from the Messenger of Allah. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Salama bin al-Muhabbak that during the campaign of Tabuk, the Prophet of Allah called for water from a woman. She said, I only have a water skin of mine made from a dead animal. He said, didn't you tan it? She said, of course. He said, tanning it purifies it. Daif. It was narrated that Aisha said, the Prophet was asked about the hides of dead animals. He said, tanning it purifies it. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, the Messenger of Allah was asked about the hides of dead animals. He said, tanning it purifies it. Great Sahih. It was narrated from Aisha that the Prophet said, the dead animal is purified by tanning it. Great Sahih. It was narrated that Aisha said, the Prophet said, the dead animal is purified by tanning it. Great Sahih. Chapter 5. With what the skin of a dead animal is tanned. It was narrated from Maimuna, the wife of the Prophet, that some men of Quraysh passed by the Messenger of Allah, dragging a sheep the size of a donkey. He said to them, why don't you take its skin? They said, it is dead meat. The Messenger of Allah said, purify it with water and karas. Great Hassan. It was narrated that Abdullah bin Ukaym said, the letter of the Messenger of Allah was read to us when I was a young boy. Do not make use of the skins and sinew of dead animals. Great Hassan. It was narrated that Abdullah bin Ukaym said, the Messenger of Allah wrote to us, do not make use of the skins and sinew of dead animals. Great Hassan. It was narrated that Abdullah bin Ukaym said, the Messenger of Allah wrote to Juhayna, do not make use of the skin and sinew of dead animals. Hassan. Abu Abdurrahman An-Nasai said, the most correct about this topic regarding the skins of the dead animal when it is tanned is the narration of As-Suri from Ubaydullah bin Abdullah from Ibn Abbas from Maimuna, and Allah knows best. Chapter 6. Concession allowing use of the hides of dead animals if they have been tanned. It was narrated from Aisha that the Messenger of Allah ordered that the hides of dead animals be made use of if they had been tanned. Daif. Chapter 7. Prohibition of making use of the hides of predators. It was narrated from Abu al-Mali from his father that the Prophet forbade the use of the hides of predators. Hassan. It was narrated that Al-Mikdam bin Madi Karib said, the Messenger of Allah forbade silk, gold and saddlecloths, miatir, made of leopard skin. Great Hassan. It was narrated that Khalid said, Al-Mikdam bin Madi Karib came to visit Muawiyah and said to him, I adjure you by Allah, do you know that the Messenger of Allah forbade wearing the hides of predators and riding on them? He said, yes. Great Hassan. Chapter 8. The prohibition of using the fat of dead animals. Al-Maita. It was narrated from Jabir bin Abdullah that during the year of the conquest, while he was in Mecca, he heard the Messenger of Allah say, Allah the Mighty and Sublime and His Messenger have forbidden the sale of alcohol, dead meat, pigs, and idols. It was said to him, O Messenger of Allah, what do you think of their fat of dead animals? For it is used to caulk ships. It is daubed on animal skins, and people use it to light their lamps. He said, "No, it is unlawful." Then the messenger of Allah said, "May Allah the Mighty and Sublime curse the Jews, for Allah forbade them the fat of dead animals, but they rendered it, sold it, and consumed its price." Great Sahih. Chapter 9. The prohibition of using whatever Allah the Mighty and Sublime has forbidden. It was narrated that Ibn Abbas said, "It reached Umar that Samura had sold some wine, and he said, May Allah ruin Samura. Does he not know that the Messenger of Allah said, May Allah curse the Jews, for animal fat was forbidden to them, but they rendered it." Sufyan, one of the narrators, said, meaning they melted it down. Great Sahih. Chapter 10. If a mouse falls into the cooking fat. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas for Maimuna that a mouse fell into some cooking fat and died. The Prophet was asked about that, and he said, "Throw it away, and whatever is around it. Throw it away, and whatever is around it, and eat the rest." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas from Maimuna that the Prophet was asked about a mouse that had fallen into some solid cooking fat. He said, "Take it, and whatever is around it, and throw it away." Great Sahih. It was narrated from Ibn Abbas from Maimuna that the Prophet was asked about a mouse that fell into the cooking fat. He said, if the fat is solid, then throw it away, and whatever is around it. If it is liquid, then do not use it at all. Daif. Ibn Abbas said, "I heard Sayyid bin Jubayr say, the Messenger of Allah passed by a dead goat and said, why didn't the owners of this sheep make use of its skin?" Chapter 11. If a fly falls into the cooking vessel. It was narrated from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri that the Prophet said, "If a fly falls into the vessel of one of you, let him dip it in." Great Hassan.